They dragged him for miles. They lashed him to the rear end of an armored hauler and let the earth carve its memory into him. His heels tore trenches in the cracked soil. His shoulders slammed every rock that refused to move. One of the trailing cables whipped smoke behind them like incense, but he didn't stir. Not once. Not even when they laughed. Not even when they shouted the names of the ones he killed. The sun hung low, filtered through ash and sand, casting the procession in long shadows. Raiders flanked the hauler, some on foot, some mounted. Their armor was scorched, patched, and crude. Clothing from a dozen generations of conflict, worn like proof of heritage. Masks hid most of their faces, but their joy was audible. Shouts cut the air in broken dialects and riddled with swears and calls to gods they'd stopped believing in. A few of them spat as they passed his body. Others reached out with sticks to jab at the golden wiring that spilled from his skull. One raider climbed on top of him mid-ride, hammering at his armored spine with the butt of a rifle until the casing cracked. Still, he did not respond. They crested the ridge before dusk. Below lay their camp, a sprawl of metal teeth in a basin of bone-dry rock. Sheet metal huts, concrete bunkers, makeshift towers capped with blinking lights that hadn't meant anything in years. And rising at the camp center, a crooked spire of steel and tension cabling, patched from old comm towers and scorched war machines. This was the center of their power, their palace of wreckage. And tonight it would shine. As they approached, a signal was fired, a burst of green flare that screamed into the sky and popped in silence. Campfires flared up in response. Cheers rolled like thunder. Raiders emerged from their dens, their hangars, their rec rooms. The prodigal killers returned, not with salvage, but with legend. The hauler stopped near the base of the central tower. Chains were detached, winches deployed. A crew of 10 began to hoist the body upright using a scaffold of blackened rebar and salvaged suspension braces. They bound his arms wide, reinforced the joints with anchor spikes, lashed cables around the throat and chest. A ring of red floodlights flickered on as the wind picked up, casting long crimson bars across his body. He hung there like a ruin, like a god defeated in his own temple, scorched, scuffed. Armored plating cracked in at least 3 major places. The massive conductive cords that once crowned his skull now hung limp behind him, dragging like a mane in the dust. The eye was dead. The gold in his wiring was dark. To one side of the scaffold stood a squat metal building. Just another piece of the camp's patchwork body. A few crates stacked beside it. Vents in the side hissing faint heat, motion sensors flickering like old eyes. No guards posted, just 2 raiders lounging nearby, drunk, rifles across their knees. The building wasn't labeled. It didn't need to be. Everyone in camp knew it was where they kept the pressure shells, the fuses, the cells, the weapons they didn't know how to use yet. No one looked at it. The celebration began at full dark. Torches lit. Music rose from crude instruments and broken speakers. Raiders circled in uneven dances, clapping weapons together, singing verses half remembered from blood rites. Every few minutes a new toast was shouted, and bottles changed hands. Flames lit the sky. Oil drums beat in time with boots. The Titan was forgotten, except when someone raised a drink toward him in mock salute, or fired a round into the air in his honor. They danced in the shadows of the thing that once hunted them across the sands. No one remembered the name of the tribe he had destroyed, or the outpost flattened under his fists. Only that he had done it with no master, that he had appeared from the east, walking, humming some ancient code in a voice no one could translate. They'd called him demon, angel, construct, revenant. All the words had lost meaning after the first deaths. The celebration stretched into the night, long past the stars coming out. A few collapsed in the sand, helmets off, masks cracked open, faces glazed with drink. A fight broke out near the mess tent and was broken up with laughter. A drone spun above, trailing colored lights. Music slowed. The fire burned lower. The wind picked up, sifting fine dust over the boots of the ones still dancing. And then something shifted. It wasn't a sound. Not at first. The change came like a held breath, like the moment before a fuse catches. One of the cables in his hair lit softly, just a faint shimmer of internal gold, barely more than static trapped in metal. Then another. The glow pulsed inward, tracing a slow path down his spine, following old channels etched into the plating. From deep in his throat, a sound began to form, a whisper not meant for ears. His fingers curled once slowly, metal scraping against dry blood and heat-scored wire. Then, with sudden force, his right arm tensed. The shackle there held for less than a second, then cracked. then shattered. The recoil rang through the scaffold like a gunshot. The Titan lifted his free arm and brought it across his chest. The plating there had been breached long ago, torn open by railfire or blades or something deeper. Beneath the ribs, inside the cavity, something still beat faintly. A core, damaged beyond repair. The seal around it flared with fractured energy, gold veins leaking a shimmer like sunlight seen underwater. Dying, but not yet dead. He pulled it free, held it in one hand like a flame. The chant continued. A line of red trickled from the fractured seal, steam rising from the crack. He looked down. His hand opened. The core dropped. It struck the metal, rolled once, twice, disappeared beneath the edge of the scaffold. Silence. Then the world ignited. The storehouse erupted in white light. Not fire, not explosion. Revelation. The ground heaved like something ancient had just taken a breath. The tower split from its base upward, seams bursting in arcs of force and debris. Every panel became a weapon, every beam a cry. The Titan did not fall. He stood there, at the heart of it, surrounded by light. His eye blazed red, searing through dust. The cables from his head lifted in the pressure, gold now glowing like scripture. Just for a moment, just long enough to be seen. Then he was gone. There was no tower anymore. There was no camp, just scorched ground and silence. And in the center of it all, a hollow groove burned into the earth like something had been dragged through it once and never let go.